Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. I'm a little bit sick, so that's why there was no upload last week. My voice is barely back, so you can kind of tell I still have a little bit of like a nasal reaction. Anyways, we have the brand new reveal at Vanguard of the Ultimate Regalia of Almighty Minerva, which is Minerva's second form, the Stride form. We also have in set 10 a brand new Jejuled, which was really exciting to see. Also got the reveal of Ruka's brand new unit, the one who guides towards Paradise and then a clear. She's kind of like a fairy in Stoicheia, so probably be plant tokens, who knows, we'll find out eventually, especially in the anime when that starts airing later this year. Let's start off with the rideline. The starter is pretty straightforward, same stuff as usual. Standard, if you want second, draw one. Pretty cute starter until you remember he commits quite the war crimes of eliminating certain races in Cray. But anyways, moving on to boy aspiring to join the Protectors, Sperod, the grade 1. When it's placed by writing from a unit with Sybilt's card name, so you do need the correct starter. Cost reveal grade 3 with Sybilt as card name from your ride deck. Search your hand for up to one Sperod and Sybilt, who we once were, which is the normal order of the deck. Reveal it and put it into your hand and shuffle the deck. We have Sperod and Sybilt, who we once were, so play this if you have a Vanguard with Sperod or Sybilt in its card name, so basically works for rideline, or when you're on the grade 3. Put this unit into Soul. Put this card into Soul, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets auto Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, when your unit without Sentinel is retired from Rearguard Circle, other than during the main phase, put that card into hand, so during battle or end phase. So auto drop, when a grade 3 or greater unit with Sybilt's card name stands by a card ability, cost, bind this unit and discard a card from hand, and your Vanguard's drive becomes 1 until end of turn. So essentially on the restand, you're going to become 2 in drive into 1 drive. So moving on to the grade 2 Sperod, on attack, you cost, retire Rearguard, reveal grade 3 with Sybilt's card name from your ride deck, draw a card, unit gets +5 until end of battle. So having a 15 van is really nice because especially when you want to guard early, this makes it so you essentially have to play 2 cards essentially to OT pass unless you hit a defensive. So Sperod is pretty strong, I would say. Just looking at the 1 and 2, you get a guaranteed order, so it's really strong with Lateefa, which I'll show in some deck lists later. And then again, you have the synergy with the grade 2 order, but retired not during the main phase. You can bounce it back to hand, essentially. So it does not work for PGs. I'll explain this later when we get to the deck list. But essentially what you're doing is you can make a free board or slam something from your hand, swing with it, then swing with Van, kill it off, bring it back to hand. And then of course the +5k and draw 1 is really nice, especially for early game. So I think the big strength of this deck, which I'll talk about later, will be just making a board and just rushing early as fast as possible. Kind of similar to how like Leonorn plays, where they have like the reroll wide line that like rushes really, really fast early game, and then they kind of try to push the game and end like by turn 3 or 4. Now for the Malwyrm Sybilt himself, we have active Vanguard Circle once per turn. Cost Soul +1. Choose up the same number of your rearguards as your opponent's Vanguard's grade until end of turn they become into the mental pollution state. And then you got auto rearguard circle at the end of your turn. Retire this unit and get power +5k. Auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked. Cost counter +1. And then the wording for this is really weird, but you choose one of your rearguards in the mental pollution state or one of your Vanguards. So you choose either one. Stand it, and until end of turn, its drive becomes 0. And then it gets +10k. So your rear or your Van is getting +10 after the restand. And again, this is end of battle. And then if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, you choose a total of 2. So essentially what you're doing is 1 Vanguard restand and 1 rearguard Van. 1 Vanguard restand and 1 rearguard restand. I almost said Vanguard twice there. So essentially what you're doing is 5 attacks, 4 attacks if you went first. And then of course Vanguard's also restanding, so similar to Varga, but you don't have to worry about killing your front row because your rears are only really dying until end of turn, so your swing order is a lot more flexible here. So that really matters for whether you want to run draws or fronts, which I'll talk about later in the deck list. And then he also has the ability of active Vanguard Circle once per turn. When a rearguard in the mental pollution state is retired during your end phase, you draw a card. So a lot of people are comparing this to Great Nature 2.0. Unfortunately, the skill is just 1 per turn, and right now we don't really have anything that really kind of helps you plus more for this. You can play mid-hat in this deck, which I will talk about as well, which I think is a really good tech just because it's just draw 1 for no CB. And unfortunately, the bouncers are really costly in terms of energy for the deck. But overall, Sybilt's still really strong. Going first, you can choose to restand Vanguard and not a rear instead. So you do like Van, rear, let's say, for example. And then the end of turn will resolve. You get to draw 1 and then maybe bounce some stuff back to hand. They have abilities very similar to Varga, which we'll get to later. But overall, pretty solid Vanguard. The first wave is very indicative of like the power level of the deck, especially when you get the second wave of support, whenever that would be, or the promo. And honestly, it looks really solid for the first wave. Definitely very CB heavy, but you get a lot of soul and a lot of plussing early, especially because the rideline sets things up very well. And of course, playing an order just means Shenri is active in Dragon Empire, which is a free 13k booster, shove the soul, draw 1. Very great cycle, good early game. So really solid stuff all around. We have some other commons right here, which I'll talk about really quickly. Some of these are in the deck list, some of them aren't, but I'll go over them just so people know. We have Dregrita Kazim. Quickly go over him. When he becomes mental pollution state during turn, time to turn, it gets auto. Retire from Vanguard Circle, you put the soul +5k. There is an ability like Shuura that bounces, so you can choose to resolve whichever one in whatever order you want. If you want to go to soul or hand, obviously going to hand is a plus, and you keep the 5k shield, but If you really need the soul, you could play Kazim, but Shenri is just better. We have Dragon Ray Shock, auto Rearguard Circle once per turn. When your unit in the same column as the unit stands, if it is in the mental pollution, stand itself. So essentially what you do is you boost a grade 2 rear, let's say, and this card, and then once the grade 2 in front of it restands with Sybilt's effect, it'll restand as well. And because it also says unit, you can also put this behind Sybilt as well and restand it as well, which is a pretty big thing because you can, let's say on Persona, be 28 or bigger, and you can also pump this with Sybilt's skill as well to give it the plus 5k, so you can essentially have a 13k restander behind Van going off twice, which is really, really nice. So moving on to the next card, we have Demonic Dragon Berserker Baki. This is essentially like the, I guess, Combine Rusher of the deck is what I would call it. So auto drop when you play normal order. Units in Vanguard, cost +1, call to Rearguard Circle. You know, the classic Combine Rusher effect, comes back from drop. Again, your CB is really, really tight in this deck because the grade 2 that I'm going to get to, the triple rare uses it. So again, you're probably only playing like 2 or 3 of this at most. And then continuous Rearguard Circles in your turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 greater, all of your Unison Dragon units get plus 5k, so everything's getting buffed. Oh, sorry, not everything's getting buffed. Your Vanguard's getting buffed essentially. And then if it's in the mental pollution state, it gets plus 5. So it's basically powering up Van in itself, which is really helpful for numbers, but I think this card is a little bit tight. I think the problem with this card is that it's not really plussing you in the early game, and this is basically just ditch fodder in the deck because, for example, people who know and play, let's say, like Ava or decks that have Combine Rushers, you want to ditch them early and basically just make a free board with them if you have too much CB, or if your deck is like, let's say, really tight on having unit spaces. But like this deck has the card that we're going to get to next, which is Desolate Flare Dragon, and this has the essentially Shuura ability to bounce. It's E3, which is really costly, but anyways. Continuous, if you have a Unison Dragon Vanguard, it gets all the following. Auto, when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, you cost counter boss 1, check top 7, choose up to 1 Unison Dragon, which is basically just your Persona ride for now. Put it to 1 normal or up to 1 normal order without Regulus Piece from on them. Reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle the deck. If you do not reveal a card, draw a card. And then the other skill is auto Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, this unit gets plus 5k until end of battle. Then cost energy plus 3. Choose when your rears, and then it gets the red text. Auto, when this unit is retired from Rearguard Circle, put this unit to hand until end of turn. So when it's dying during the end phase, it's basically boomeranging back to your hand. Very similar to Varga essentially, except it's just not happening during battle phase. So really solid card. My only problem is that it uses CB. At least it does something for whiffing. If you whiff the top 7, you get to draw 1, which is already better than some other check top 7s that we've gotten recently. It's truly the standard problem of all time, but honestly, still really solid card. If you have an excess CB, this can find you Persona Ride. It can find you a normal order. Can't grab blitz orders, which kind of sucks. So you can't grab like Defensing Roar, let's say. But I mean, it's still really solid card all around. At worst, you just CB1, draw 1 for whiffing. And again, this is the only thing that's really giving the bounce ability back to your hand besides the normal order that you play for turn that the rideline searches. So between those two, you're probably bouncing most of your board back to hand, usually around, let's say, 2 to 3. It really sucks that this is E3 though, because you can't really play Fallheart in the deck because your energy is really competitive. Yes, you can CB for Fallheart, but then you put yourself in scenarios where you could get damage denied, and that's like really awkward. Alright, so that is pretty much it for the deck. Those are my thoughts on all the units, and I do have a few deck lists I want to talk about. The first one I have here is like very clunky. The basic idea is that you have Lateefa and Shenri, and you'll basically see that in all these deck lists because it's pretty much just for early game. Standard is definitely in the point where you need to slam cards early and plus to beat your opponent's face in, and that's pretty much what the idea is with Lateefa and Shenri. You get a guaranteed order turn 2. All you have to do is open Lateefa pretty much. You just Soul Blast 1, make a board. You have lots of soul refueling between Shenri and the order going to soul. And then once you Soul Blast the order, you'll have it easily set up for Sybilt's restand and basically be doing 3 drives. Twin drive into 0 drives, then drives out to 1. The fact that that is also not restricted to grade 3 Van is really big. The only thing restricted to your opponent's Van being grade 3 is the choosing 2, so doing the 5 attacks for standing rear and Sybilt. So essentially, you only get to choose 1 for the end of battle. If you're going first, you're either restanding a rear or Van, so your attack patterns are a little bit projected, and I think that's why choosing fronts over draws are a little bit awkward. In Varga, you wanted to play fronts for bigger shield for Defensing Roar, but draws were more optimal because you're killing your front row. With Sybilt, you have a little bit more flexibility because you have the decision of whether you want to restand Van or rear first, but because you're giving +5 with the first auto skill and the mental pollution state, you're honestly usually scaling all of your rears over defensive if you have a column. So let's say Shenri's 13, you have like a grade 2, let's say like Lateefa, assuming no power from like anything else, let's say like the second skill of Lateefa for those who know. Like Shenri Lateefa on its own is already 2033, because 13 boosts, so 2328, sorry. So because you have Lateefa at 10, Shenri at 13, and then +5 from Sybilt. If you target both of them, then it's getting extra. I mean, usually you're not going to target Shenri because it's going to shove the soul draw 1 because you played an order for turn. But yeah, that's basically the idea of the deck. You're getting very good early game. You're just going in at your opponent, and then your turn 3, you're kind of just farming and swinging. Ethan is just in here because it's your only CC for the deck. You also have Gojo and Caliburn. Those are pretty much your only options. Your other really great cards are the one of Ace unit, which is just E3, blow something up, draw 1. That's essentially just here. Also because it's a 25k beater as well. You could bounce it, but again, it's an Ace unit, so you only have the unique skill that you can use once per game. But other than that, you can still use the second auto skill, which is to, on attack, your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 greater, get plus 5k. The opponent has no rear guards or rear guards are left by your card's ability, it also gets plus 5. So at worst, it's just a 15k beater that you can bounce. Baki, I have it 2 here in this deck list, and some other ones I have it 3, because honestly, I don't really like the card that much. Of course, it is buffing Van, so you make really nice numbers, let's say on like your Persona Ride turn. But like at worst, you could always just slam the Restander behind Van if you really needed like really good numbers to push, if you felt like you're in a terrible position. And the other thing is like you don't want to really use the CB from drop because you put yourself in really awkward situations where you can't get damage denied and you rather spend that CB on the grade 2 to just draw 1. So it's kind of like you want to spend your CB to either thin your deck with the grade 2, or do you want to like draw 1, or do you want to spend that CB on Baki just to res and have a beater? Caliburn's just here because it's really the only counter charge you have that's on command. You put it to Soul CC1, or at worst it's just Pot of Greed, it's just draw 2. You could also play defensing Roar as well, which is in this list at 2 because, you know, bouncing OT and effect fronts are really good for guarding early and saving a lot of hand, especially because you want to get to late games where you have Persona Ride and like you're basically trying to farm every turn while pushing cards out of your opponent's hand because you're doing 5 swings. You also have options such as like Twin Cast. I guess you could play Saphir or maybe like Sound of Wave when we get those, because those are more defensive blitz orders if you don't want to get rushed as much early. But yeah, the rest of the deck list is pretty straightforward. In the other list, I have Mid-Hat and other cards just to like farm and draw. But I mean, there isn't really too much to really cook with this list. You could cut the Ace unit. It's not really needed, especially because you're spending 3 energy on your grade 2. But I mean, like E3 to draw 1 is pretty good. And then once you have all the conditions fulfilled by just playing the once per game skill, you just have a 25k beater, which is really nice. You can even buff him up to like 30 with Sybilt. And yeah, the deck is pretty straightforward. Lateefa and Shenri are really just here for early game. Again, like I said before, you get a guaranteed order, so as long as you open 1 Lateefa, you're just like making a board turn 2. Play Shenri or let's say the 8k behind Vanguard early, you were making 23 or 28, depending on the numbers, because the Van gets plus 5 on the swing. So you're making really good numbers that are hard to guard, especially early game. And in standard, that's really important because if you don't have a hand of 15Ks, I don't know how you're guarding. You're just taking everything. Like getting hit by 23, 28 going like first when you're on an 8k grade 1 is just so messed up. Like you just cannot guard. And then again, defensing Roar and other things are here in this deck just to prolong the game. I do have other options such as like you have so many other options in Dragon Empire that are just random generics you can play and just to like shove into the deck and try out. I think Galnet is really if you want to kind of play the long game, because if you do play that with defensing Roar, you can get a 30k shield twice, or you can just, you know, use the remove effect twice to draw 1 because you're always going to Soul Blast. And finding Persona Ride is not hard when you're playing 3. And then of course you have the check top 7 grade 2 as well. But yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on Sybilt. I don't know how this recording is at 15 minutes. Probably gonna have to cut it down to 10. But yeah, honestly, I just didn't have time to upload last week and my voice was dying. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Pretty excited for Sybilt. Sybilt's pretty awesome. Let me know what you think, or if you've cooked any other deck lists. I think the deck is pretty straightforward for just Dragon Empire generics. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.